Random House Audio presents The War That Ended Peace by Margaret MacMillan. Read for you by Richard Burnip. Introduction. War or Peace? There have been as many plagues as wars in history, yet always wars and plagues take people equally by surprise. Albert Camus, The Plague. Nothing that ever happened, nothing that was ever even willed, planned, or envisaged could seem irrelevant. War is not an accident. It is an outcome. One cannot look back too far to ask, of what? Elizabeth Bowen, Bowen's Court. Louvain was a dull place, said a guidebook in 1910, but when the time came it made a spectacular fire. None of its inhabitants could have expected such a fate for their beautiful and civilized little town. Prosperous and peaceful over many centuries, it was known for its collection of wonderful churches, ancient houses, a superb Gothic town hall, and a famous university which had been founded in 1425. The university library, in the distinguished old Cloth Hall, held some 200,000 books, including a great many works of theology and classics, as well as a rich collection of manuscripts, which ranged from a little collection of songs written down by a monk in the 9th century to illuminated manuscripts over which the monks had toiled for years. In late August 1914, however, as the smell of smoke filled the air, the flames that destroyed Louvain could be seen from miles away. Much of the town, including its great library, went, while its desperate inhabitants, in scenes that would become all too familiar to the 20th century world, struggled out into the countryside, carrying what belongings they could. Like much of Belgium, Louvain had the misfortune to be on the route of the German invasion of France in the Great War that broke out in the summer of 1914, and which was to last until the 11th of November, 1918. The German war plans called for a two-front war, with a holding action against Russia, the enemy in the east, and a rapid invasion and defeat of France in the west. Belgium, a neutral country, was meant to acquiesce quietly as German troops marched through on their way southwards. As with so much of what later happened in the Great War, those assumptions turned out to be very wrong. The Belgian government decided to resist, which immediately threw the German plans out, and the British, after some hesitation, entered the war against Germany. By the time the German troops arrived in Louvain on the 19th of August, they were already resentful at what they saw as an unreasonable Belgian resistance, and they were nervous about being attacked by Belgian and British troops, as well as by ordinary civilians who might decide to take up arms. For the first few days, all went well. The Germans behaved correctly, and the citizens of Louvain were too afraid to show any hostility to the invaders. On the 25th of August, new German troops arrived, retreating from a Belgian counterattack, and rumours spread that the British were coming. Shots were fired, most likely by the nervous and perhaps drunken German soldiers. Panic mounted among the Germans, who were convinced that they were under attack, and the first of the reprisals started. That night, and in the next days, civilians were dragged out of their houses, and a number, including the mayor, the head of the university, and several police officers, were shot out of hand. By the end, some 250 out of a population of around 10,000 were dead, and many more had been beaten up and insulted. 1,500 inhabitants of Louvain, from babies to grandparents, were put on a train and sent to Germany, where the crowds greeted them with taunts and insults. The German soldiers, and their officers frequently joined in, sacked the town, looting and pillaging and deliberately setting buildings on fire. 1,100 of Louvain's 9,000 houses were destroyed. A 15th-century church went up in flames and its roof caved in. Around midnight on the 25th of August, German soldiers went into the library and poured petrol about. By morning, the building was a ruin and its collection no longer existed, although the fires smouldered on for several days afterwards. A local scholar and priest talked to the American ambassador in Belgium a few days later. The Belgian was calm as he described the destruction in the city, the friends shot, the pathetic refugees. But when he got to the library, he put his head on his arms and wept. "The centre of the city is a smoking heap of ruins," reported a professor who returned. "An oppressive silence everywhere. Everybody has fled. At the windows of cellars, I see frightened faces." This was only the start, as Europe laid waste to itself in the Great War. The 700-year-old Rheims Cathedral, the most beautiful and important of the French cathedrals, and where most French kings had been crowned, was pulverized by German guns shortly after the sack of Louvain. The head of one of its magnificent sculptured angels was found lying on the ground, its beatific smile still intact. Ypres, with its own superb cloth hall, was reduced to rubble, and the heart of Treviso in the north of Italy destroyed by bombs. Much, although by no means all of the destruction, came at the hands of Germans, something which had a profound impact on American opinion and which helped to propel the United States towards entering the war in 1917. As a German professor said ruefully at the war's end, "Today we may say that the three names Louvain, Rheims, Lusitania, in almost equal measure, have wiped out sympathy with Germany in America." Louvain's losses were small indeed by what was to come. The more than 9 million soldiers dead and another 15 million wounded, or the devastation of much of the rest of Belgium, the north of France, Serbia, or parts of the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires. Yet Louvain came to be a symbol of the senseless destruction, the damage inflicted by Europeans themselves on what had been the most prosperous and powerful part of the world, and the irrational and uncontrollable hatreds between peoples who had so much in common. The Great War started on the other side of Europe from Louvain, in Sarajevo in the Balkans, with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Like the fires that raced through Louvain, that act set in motion a conflict which grew to encompass most of Europe and many parts of the world beyond. The greatest battles, and the greatest losses, were on the western and eastern fronts, but there was fighting too in the Balkans, in the north of Italy, throughout the Middle East and in the Caucasus, as well as in the Far East, the Pacific, and Africa. Soldiers from around the world also poured into Europe, whether from India, Canada, New Zealand or Australia in the British Empire, or from Algeria or sub-Saharan Africa in the French. China sent coolies to transport supplies and dig trenches for the Allies, while Japan, also an ally, helped to patrol the world's waterways. In 1917, the United States.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?